But I did want to get all of my Aaron Rodgers talk out of the way, and I am going to get all of my Aaron Rodgers talk out of the way today. Today is Aaron Rodgers Day, a national holiday. Just kidding, not really. It's Aaron Rodgers Day. This is a special short episode of the podcast because I do have a lot to say about the topic, and this Aaron Rodgers drama is one of the most interesting yet weird stories I think I've ever come across in my years as a sports writer. Granted, that's not very many. I've only been working as a sports writer for about 6 or 7 years, but still. I thought about shoving this in the podcast, as I said. I didn't think it would fit. I think it deserved its own episode, and I have a lot of notes. I got like 7 pages of notes here on this entire topic, and I have a lot to say, and I think I have a lot to add to it. And I don't want this to be... I don't want to keep talking about Aaron Rodgers for like the next month or so. I don't want to be like Brett Favre. I don't want to be like Brett Favre to where whenever there's a little sliver of Aaron Rodgers news, somebody rubs my magic genie lamp and I sprout out after being in hibernation for years and years and years and have to comment on Aaron Rodgers. I don't want to do that, and I don't want to milk this topic. I want to make sure that I get everything out of the way. And I think people are going to get bored of this topic eventually as well, so I want to make sure that I get my say in and get my piece in. And to catch you up to speed, let's just go ahead and get into it. To catch you up to speed, a story was released by ESPN's Adam Schefter in which he said that Rodgers does not like Green Bay anymore. He is unhappy in Green Bay and he wants out of the Green Bay Packers. He didn't necessarily say that Rodgers wants to be traded, but that was insinuated. Instead, the language said that Rodgers was unhappy and that he wants out of Green Bay. And this story was released on draft day and essentially put a huge cloud over what was otherwise a pretty solid draft for the Green Bay Packers, to be, totally honest. I like the pieces that they got in the draft. And then as the days progressed, there were more bits and pieces and rumors that came out involving the story, one of them being that Rodgers wants Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst fired, and that he considers him to be the quote-unquote Jerry Krause of the NFL. If you don't know who Jerry Krause is, Jerry Krause was the manager of the Bulls when Michael Jordan was playing in Chicago, so that should give you a kind of a representation of how Rodgers views this situation between him and the Packers. And Rodgers more or less confirmed that there was, in fact, a rift between him and the front office in an interview that he did at the Kentucky Derby. So Schefter's information was more or less correct, but as we're going to talk about in a little bit, it still doesn't justify the fact that he dropped the news on draft day. And that is the interesting twist. There is an extremely interesting twist in the fact that Adam Schefter decided that he was going to drop this on draft day. And he also said, when he went on the Dan Patrick show, he also said that there was no sources on the story, that this was a compiling and an accumulation of stories and rumblings that he had heard across the league pretty much ever since the NFC Championship game. And even though Schefter's information appears to be correct, his decision to do this on draft day and without a credible source is interesting. It's really interesting to me, and it makes it so weird, and I kind of want to explain why. And I think where I want to start with this is actually a story, a personal story. I've been covering Florida State sports for 6 or 7 years now, and if you're knowledgeable about college football, you'll end up remembering this. But after Willie Taggart was fired at Florida State, it was in the middle of the 2019 season. They had just lost to Miami. Florida State was looking for a new head coach at the end of the season, and one of the local TV station sports reporters, I'm not going to say her name, we'll just call her Mary. Mary had a source that said that Bob Stoops was in Tallahassee and at Florida State University. If you don't know who Bob Stoops is, he was a very famous coach at Oklahoma. He's the current athletic director at Nebraska. He was in Tallahassee at the time, and he was visiting Florida State, and nobody knew why, and it was reported, and she got sources that said Bob Stoops was going to be the next head coach of the Florida State Seminoles. And every single news source, every single news affiliate got the same information from their own individual sources. Bob Stoops is in Tallahassee. He could be going after the Florida State head coaching job. And obviously, the head coach turned out to be Mike Norvell from Clemson. And all of our sources ended up being incorrect. And I want to make the distinction that there is absolutely a difference between your sources being incorrect and giving you incorrect information and having no sources whatsoever and putting forward the information yourself. There's a lot of credibility that is involved and is on the line here for Adam Schefter. Sources are extremely, extremely important. And there is a huge difference between, as I said, if our sources were wrong, they gave us the wrong information, here's the right information, and there are no sources, this is all in my investigation, this is my story. There is a lot of credibility lost there. There's a lot that's on the line for Schefter, and even though it appears his information ended up being correct, as I said, or somewhat correct, it's very interesting that he decided to do this and go ahead and post it without any credible information apart from what he's heard through the grapevine. Because Schefter decided to release this story on draft day, it did a number of things that kind of shaped the narrative of the story. And this is why a lot of athletes don't like the media. This is why they don't like talking to press. This is why the media and players normally don't get along. Because Adam Schefter decided to drop this story on draft day, the narrative around the story was immediately that Aaron Rodgers is out for the blood of the Green Bay Packers. This is a revenge story. He did this methodically. He did this maliciously. He is out for revenge. He did this on purpose on the draft day, the same day that the Green Bay Packers drafted Jordan Love 1 year ago. The perception is that it's Rodgers who is leaking the information and he's out for revenge and he is being extremely petty. That is the narrative, or rather was the narrative. That was the narrative around this entire story because Adam Schefter decided to leak the story on draft day. And that narrative is what took control of everything. So it begs the question, who is the one leaking the information if it's not Rodgers? Because obviously now we know that there was no important source. It wasn't anybody from Rodgers' camp. It wasn't anybody from the Packers' camp. So that would leave Rodgers' family, friends, and former teammates. And Rodgers is very publicly not a fan of his family. He dislikes his family very much, and I don't think he's in contact with them very much. So I don't think it's one of those situations, kind of like Kawhi Leonard's uncle, where, you know, Kawhi Leonard has that uncle that's commenting on Kawhi's behalf, and that uncle is kind of like estranged. It's not one of those situations, but it begs the question, who is leaking this information if it's not Rodgers and it's not the Packers? So Schefter effectively said on the Dan Patrick Show that he didn't feel like it mattered when the story came out, and frankly, I absolutely disagree with that. It absolutely matters. The draft is the happiest day of the year for every single NFL franchise, right? It's the one day a year where every single NFL team is positive and happy about their current situation. It's the one day a year where you get a player that you feel can turn around your franchise more or less. And if you're, drafting in the last 5 selections in the round, that's kind of just a cherry on top for the season that you had. If you're drafting number 32, obviously you won the Super Bowl and you just get an additional gift, This year, the additional gift for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers was a great defensive end out of Miami. So, according to Schefter, he felt like it didn't matter what day the story dropped. So Schefter dropped a bomb, and now the Packers, instead of having another 2 to 3 months to try and fix the relationship between Rodgers privately, have 1 month to fix it publicly, with about 28 other NFL teams breathing down their neck and having them on their speed dial and calling repeatedly about Aaron Rodgers. The timing absolutely matters, and now the Packers have been forced to try and make amends with Rodgers in front of the entire viewing public instead of trying to handle it privately, while also trying to make preparations for the fact that Rodgers might leave and might decide to leave anyways, and they are going to be forced to try and find some replacements for Rodgers while Jordan Love gets kind of pushed headfirst off the cliff into the spotlight. So I don't care what Adam Schefter says. I don't care about the feelings that he had when it came to, okay, it doesn't matter when I'm going to drop the story. The timing of the story absolutely matters in this instance because, again, as we already said, the narrative initially was that it was Rodgers that leaked the story, that he was being a petty and manipulative and very grudge-holding kind of bastard. That was the perception around Rodgers. Now, and obviously, if you already don't like Rodgers, that's the take that you're going to take anyways. So that the narrative of the story was incorrect from the very beginning, and now you have Schefter saying, well, I didn't really have any sources on the situation. That calls into question the credibility of the story in its entirety, and that also calls into question, rather, how much of the story is actually true and if it's actually that serious. Hey folks, thank you so much for listening to this segment from the Hard-Headed Sports Podcast. If you enjoyed this segment, make sure that you drop a like on the video and a comment. It helps me out a bunch. And if you're interested in watching more segments like this from the show after the show has been completed, you should definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. And if you're interested in listening to the entire show in its full-length entirety, you should listen to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor. Once again, thank you so much for watching the video. My name is Nick Ryan, and I will see you all again very soon.